the fragility hidden inside efficiency. From the outside, everything looks smooth. Systems run faster than ever. Deliveries arrive on time. Platforms scale instantly. Performance metrics climb steadily upward. Efficiency feels like progress made visible. But beneath that surface, something fragile is forming. When efficiency becomes a primary goal, systems quietly trade resilience for speed. To understand why this matters now, we need to look at what efficiency removes, and why what's missing only becomes obvious when it's too late. For most of modern history, inefficiency was tolerated. Extra inventory sat unused. Backup processes waited quietly. Human judgment slowed decisions. These elements looked wasteful, but they served a purpose. They absorbed shock. They allowed recovery. They gave systems room to breathe. Their value was invisible during normal operations and only became apparent during moments of stress, which made them perpetually vulnerable to elimination. The reveal begins when efficiency becomes measurable and therefore irresistible. Data identifies idle capacity. Algorithms flag redundancy. Optimization trims everything that doesn't contribute directly to output. The system becomes lean, responsive, and impressively precise. At first, nothing seems wrong. Costs fall. Speed increases. Results improve. Success reinforces the design, encouraging even tighter optimization. Every layer becomes dependent on the next, each one perfectly tuned to the same assumptions. But hidden inside that precision is vulnerability. When every component runs at capacity, there is no buffer left. When every process depends on perfect timing, delays cascade. Efficiency removes options quietly, replacing them with dependence. As systems scale, this fragility multiplies. Local disruptions become global problems. Small errors propagate instantly. The same design that maximizes performance also maximizes exposure. What makes this dangerous is that efficiency doesn't feel risky. It feels responsible. It feels smart. It feels inevitable, until the moment it fails, and there is nothing left to catch the fall. The question is not whether efficiency works. It's whether it works when reality refuses to cooperate. As efficiency spread across systems, the early warning signs were easy to dismiss. Minor delays, small outages, isolated breakdowns. Each was treated as an exception, a temporary glitch in an otherwise flawless machine. Efficiency had trained everyone to expect perfection and to ignore fragility. The conflict emerged when these exceptions stopped being isolated. Because systems were tightly coupled, small failures propagated instantly. A delayed shipment disrupted entire supply chains. A server outage rippled across dependent services. An automated error multiplied before humans could intervene. Efficiency had erased isolation. What had once been separate, independently functioning parts of a larger whole were now woven together so tightly that the failure of any single component became the potential failure of the entire system. Organizations struggled because efficiency had removed redundancy at every level. There were no extra teams to absorb stress, no alternate routes to reroute flow, no slack time to diagnose issues before they escalated. The system demanded continuous operation, even as conditions deteriorated. People inside these systems felt the strain. Every delay felt catastrophic. Every mistake felt amplified. Work intensified as buffers disappeared. Burnout rose as performance expectations remained high while resilience eroded. Efficiency optimized output, but exhausted the humans sustaining it. In digital environments, the fragility was even sharper. Algorithms optimized for engagement pushed extremes because they performed better. Automated responses amplified volatility instead of calming it. The faster the system reacted, the less stable it became. Efficiency accelerated instability. Defenders argued that fragility was the price of progress, that redundancy was waste, that resilience could be engineered later. But fragility doesn't announce itself early. It hides behind success metrics until stress reveals it all at once. The deeper issue was not failure itself. It was the lack of recovery. Efficient systems recovered slowly because they had nothing left to sacrifice. They were optimized for success, not survival. The build-up led to a sobering realization. Efficiency does not eliminate risk. It concentrates it. And when risk is concentrated, collapse stops being gradual. It becomes sudden. As fragility accumulated, the system's breaking points grew harder to predict and easier to trigger. What once required major shocks now unraveled under minor stress. The margin between normal operation and crisis became dangerously thin. The conflict intensified when recovery itself became a liability. Efficient systems could restart quickly, but only by returning to the same fragile state that caused a failure. Nothing fundamentally changed. Each recovery planted the seeds of the next collapse. Stability became an illusion maintained by constant motion. Institutions reacted by tightening control, more monitoring, faster alerts, quicker automated responses. But each layer of control increased complexity, and complexity amplified fragility. The system grew faster, smarter, and more brittle at the same time. Inside organizations, this dynamic reshaped behavior. People stopped thinking in terms of prevention and began thinking in terms of response. Firefighting replaced foresight. Short-term fixes crowded out long-term resilience. Success was measured by how quickly normal operation resumed, not by whether the system became safer. Emotionally, confidence eroded. Trust in systems weakened as failures became frequent and unpredictable. The same efficiency that once inspired pride now produced anxiety. Everyone knew the system worked, until it didn't. And no one knew what would trigger the next failure. In interconnected networks, fragility became systemic. One optimized system depended on another, forming chains of vulnerability. When one link snapped, others followed. There was no central point to intervene, no clear boundary to contain damage. Failure spread as efficiently as success once had. The build-up reached a critical realization. Efficiency did not just hide fragility. It created it by removing everything that made systems adaptable. Flexibility, redundancy, and slack were not weaknesses. They were survival mechanisms mistaken for waste. The danger was no longer hypothetical. Fragility had become a structural feature, invisible during calm, unavoidable under stress. And once fragility is embedded, collapse is not a possibility. It is a matter of timing. The turning point came when efficiency stopped being admired and started being questioned. The narrative shifted from speed to stability, from output to endurance. The costs were no longer theoretical. They were lived. The climax revealed a hard truth. Efficient systems fail not because they are poorly designed, but because they are designed too narrowly. They optimize for a world that behaves predictably, even though reality never does. When the unexpected arrives, efficiency offers no protection. Out of this realization, resilience reclaimed its value. Redundancy was reframed as insurance, not waste. Friction became a stabilizer, not an obstacle. Systems were redesigned to absorb stress rather than eliminate it. Progress slowed deliberately, not to regress, but to survive. The resolution redefined success. Systems were no longer judged solely by peak performance, but by their ability to recover. Stability became a competitive advantage. Longevity mattered more than speed. The goal shifted from doing more with less to sustaining function under uncertainty. This change did not reject efficiency. It put it in context. Efficiency remained useful, but only within systems strong enough to handle failure. Optimization was no longer allowed to erase the very features that made recovery possible. The lesson was clear. A system that cannot survive its own failure is not truly efficient, regardless of how well it performs under ideal conditions. The fragility hidden inside efficiency was not a flaw to be fixed. It was a lesson to be remembered. Subscribe to join the journey. The fragility